See the Lord. He helped us to make it better. I was a kid when I learned about its races. I was taught by my parents. In those days, they would teach the children to stay in their place. Don't argue, don't fight, don't do nothing. I believe in the Lord. The Lord will bring us out from under bondage. The Lord meant you to be meek. Meek mean humble. Sometimes you have to take things.
Now, Sonny Boy Williams back in his time, he said, "Now look, I declare you pretty, and the whole state know you fine. You know what comes up again, black, white. When you say I declare you pretty, and the whole state knows you fine, that go for you and me. And you know what that do when he say that. That brings eyesight back to the blind. That's what the blues message do. It brings eyesight to the blind. No feeling meek, no feeling humble, just feeling proud about who I is. That's what the blues is about. My proudness I can see again."
Cold coffee in Hot Springs. Hot Springs Tag was home of the healing mineral waters. Hot Springs' population is 600 and located on the Flathead Reservation, the home of the Salish and Kootenai tribes. As we got out of the van, the mineral baths gave off the smell of the sulfur, being carried in the breeze along with the faint odor of wild sage. It is a beautiful, unhurried town, populated with people living in wood cabins along with steamy baths, nuzzled in the western mountains of Montana. Snow once again, glittering in the sun, sitting at the crests of the mountains. The evergreen trees cascading down the steep slopes, and the smell of the town's pride was inescapable. I felt like I belonged there. This was how I had wanted land to be when there was a time that I didn't have any reference for the imagined. The sweating and steamy log cabins were now items of Hot Springs history. Standing in their place were the imitation Old West motels and bathhouses to accommodate the thousands of tourists who show up to benefit from the healing waters. They seek relief for their arthritis, skin diseases, ulcers, high blood pressure, and sins of the body as they submerge into nature's baptismal for all that ails them. Enough for the serenity of nature. AC was on me. "Where the hell do you think you're going? We've driven about 50 miles out of our way." I immediately got defensive. "Well, why didn't you honk or something?" Of course, AC had an answer. "There was nowhere to turn around. If you're in front, your job is to pay attention. You're supposed to pay attention." "Fuck you. Everyone makes mistakes, even you." Lenny broke up the fight. AC and I were just getting started, and Lenny wasn't about to deal with that vibe. We already had the Nina one simmering, who hadn't talked to anyone for the last 100 miles. Lenny and I found a bench in front of a dilapidated combination general store gas station, Woody's Auto Body Repair and Grocery Store. Got some cowboy coffee that tasted like it had been cooked too long on a campfire, making it resemble thick mud, but we drank it anyway. Signs plastered in the windows selling what they had to offer. In one window, the homemade sign advertised Kern's bread and fancy cakes, all sizes for all occasions. In the other window, the pitch was cheap gas and bingo every Thursday at the senior center. A smaller, sun-faded sign, taped at the bottom of the window, corners peeling back ever so slowly, was touting stationery supplies. It was nice. I'm a big fan of one-stop shopping. The group scattered for a while. We needed to get away from each other. There were open spaces for our group to wander, so it was a good place for us to get some downtime. I watched everyone as they roamed. AC was organizing her maps. Paula went for a walk to stretch her legs. Nina went shopping for tampons. Chrissy was headed for the horses in the pasture across the road from us. Lucy was off looking for a bar. Sam, always on the prowl for baseball mitts, wanted to see if the antique shop was open. Marty hoped for a music store and went searching. This left Lenny and I. For better or for worse, I loved these people. This configuration of human beings was not going to continue forever. I took it all in and hoped it would last for hours. Meanwhile, Lenny and I needed to talk about set lists. We had some big shows coming up and I needed his advice. From the beginning, Lenny and I had decided it was best we made up the order of the tunes. Whenever we would leave the decision-making to the women, the show would end up ballad-heavy. It always amazed me how they would put their own personal agendas ahead of the bigger picture. I don't think the women ever considered that putting together a great set list was an art in itself. One of the most important items was making sure that we opened and closed with the strongest songs. Usually, we began with something that rocked and closed with a gospel. Next was making sure that the songs that followed each other weren't in the same key or had the same feel, eliminating sameness in sound. I considered Chrissy, AC, and Paula the heavy hitters, so I always tried like hell to keep them one singer apart and wedge Nina, Lucy, and myself in between them. There, Lenny and I sat on a log, two human bumps, in 90-degree heat, not saying anything, just thinking. I was in La La Land because of the scenery. Lenny was busy fighting with the damp joint that he couldn't keep lit. Lenny took pot seriously. No matter what, I knew he would get the joint lit and burning. Except for fighting with the joint, he had the whole cool look down. Black sweats with the ends stuck into the tops of black tie-up boots, a black t-shirt with matching black leather cap, accessorized by an earring in the shape of a crucifix hanging from his left ear. The man wasn't religious. When looking at him, there were limited possibilities of what he could be in life. My guesses would have been a truck driver, a pimp, a drug dealer, or a blues musician. Though he looked rough and tough, Lenny was a smart man. He knew something about most things. However, if you'd overheard our conversation, you'd never know it. When Lenny couldn't think of the word he needed, which was fairly often, he would substitute it with the word shit. Guess it was a prison thing. Lenny finally got the joint going. The conversation with Lenny in the middle of the spectacular natural backdrop was surreal. Henry David Thoreau does Golden Pond on ecstasy. Lenny was done talking and on to bigger challenges, like keeping the damn joint fired up. He seemed oblivious to the surroundings, while at the same time it was all I could think about. Our break was almost over, and I was sure Hot Springs would be a place I could live and do just fine for the rest of my life. I was getting tired and needed a comfortable bed soon. All the driving and my bad habits were catching up with me. We had 2 more hours to Missoula. The unplanned pit stop in Hot Springs worked because I wasn't the only one that was impressed with its beauty. Once we arrived in Missoula, Nina started talking again. She must have had the clock in her head serviced on a regular basis to keep it so incredibly accurate. Her mood changes were even more consistent than the waterproof watch that I'd paid $100 for.
I'm so sorry, Lena, if I upset you. I have a lot on my mind, you know. I shouldn't have taken it out on you. I know you'll forgive me because you're so fabulous.
I smiled and nodded, but Nina was assuming too much. I was exhausted and worn out. My patience was getting even thinner than Nina. I didn't feel like making excuses for these people anymore. I didn't want to be in charge. I didn't want to be around the drama. I missed Bo, but was too sick to call him. I felt sick all the time. I wondered, in the words of Lenny, how much more of this shit could I take? We all checked into the motel. It was early evening, but everyone stayed in and licked their wounds. I'm sure I wasn't the only exhausted player on the team. Missoula is a large college town with a population of 50,000. 50,000 people with a Birkenstock-wearing, granola-eating, natural fiber-using only recycled products feeling to them. In that way, they were much like Port Townsend, Eugene, and Corvallis. These towns are throwbacks to the 60s. The women are in long, gauzy peasant skirts and short embroidered vests. The men in blue jeans and shapeless pullover shirts with bell sleeves made out of loose knit cotton somewhere in India. Both with hair hanging loose, with the exception of one braid of multicolored string hanging from underneath their mops. I woke up around 11 in the morning and felt pretty good. I lay in bed sorting out some basic information. Let's see. It's Thursday, so tomorrow will be 1 week into the trip. I felt like I had been out a hell of a lot longer than 7 days. That night was the Tip Top Club, which meant 3 one-hour shows. I would take it easy that day. As I was making some plans for the day, Nina called.
What y'all doing this afternoon?
Nothing yet. Why? What's up? On the way, Nina and I got caught up on gossip. I gotta find out about what was going on in the other van. They had their own cheap drama.
AC is bossing everyone around thinking that being in charge is her job. I'll tell you what, that girl is under some wild illusion that she needs to manage everything and everybody. In that van, she treats all of us like we are just some dumb cattle. That girl is lucky we don't stampede her big old ass. We stop where she wants to stop, eat where she wants to eat, go to the bathroom when she needs to go. She's a blues Nazi. On the other hand, it's really eerie. AC clammed up 2 days ago and won't talk anymore. I mean, unless she's yelling. I just don't know what to do for that poor girl. She looks so miserable while snapping at everyone. I've been trying to act like none of it is happening, but I tell you what, I'm just plain tired from the whole damn thing.
Listening to Nina, I could see the signs. Nina and AC were starting to mutiny. Nina was right. AC had been real quiet and hanging out by herself for most of the trip. She didn't seem happy at all, and I knew it had something to do with some of the bullshit that had been going on within the group, but I chose to ignore it. I had other things on my mind, like Bo. Traveling with AC would definitely put Nina over the top. Right now, Nina was being nice, but most of the time, she was more foul than usual. Her being difficult because she wasn't getting sex was something we were used to. But she did seem meaner on this trip. AC bossing her around was like pouring salt into her open sexual wound. Nina didn't usually gossip. I mean, she wasn't a saint or anything. Her talking to me about all of this was her way of letting me know that people were unhappy. The AC thing was getting bad. I could approach AC about the complaints, but she would act like we were all crazy and she was just doing her job. So it didn't seem worth the wasted breath. The women traveling with Captain Bligh would soon mutiny her ship in 1 or 2 days, probably 1. Nina talked about how she tried to reason with AC, but Nina couldn't fool me because I could hear her sweet tongue coated with bitterness. Nina was oblivious to my private psychoanalysis of her. So she kept on talking.
I said, now, AC, honey, don't you think it would be more fair if we did things democratically? Why don't we make these little decisions together?
Once again, Nina's candy-coated rationale was attacking the wrong problem. AC wanted to be in charge. That was the point. For AC, it was never about democracy. Nina was getting pretty heated up as she told me how AC answered in an I am in charge voice.
I know the area. I've been out here on the road more than you guys have. It would be better if I make the decisions. We don't have time to discuss every little detail. This way, it's better if I decide what's good for the group.
AC was big and somehow managed to look bigger when she was pushing people around, like my cat when getting ready to pounce on a poor defenseless mouse. I wanted more dirt. What did you do then, Nina? She smiled.
Actually, sugar, I was just trying not to crack up. Their AC was lecturing full-grown, red-blooded women as though we were little bitty girls, and meanwhile, she had half a Kit Kat stuffed in her big old mouth.
We both laughed. Why were each of us always the last to realize how utterly ridiculous we can be? In the meantime, Nina needed to shop. Little plastic credit cards would help us let off some steam. And thank God for those cards. It was the only way we could survive out on the road between paychecks. Thoughts of Bo were lurking close by in the shadows where I was trying to keep them. But as soon as the conversation would die down, leaving me in silence, his face would appear, and then the sound of his voice. I had heard the human heart could beat for 3 to 6 hours outside of the body. I had proof that it could beat for much longer than hours. Days, in fact. I missed Bo so much. It seemed like there was nothing between us but miles of road and nothing ahead of us but endless tomorrows.
Back yonder, before the world in which we now lie was shaped and fashioned in accordance with the plans and specifications of the supreme architect of the universe, it was way back yonder before the morning stars clapped their hands and sang together. It was before the beasts roamed the dense forest, before the fowls tried their wings at beating the air, before the little fish swam the mighty deep. That is when the eternal wisdom of God knew the destiny of souls and the purpose of your pain. Your business is not why or what or when or to feel sorry for yourself. That's God's business. Your business is to have faith.
I can say 3 or 4 things in life. Unlucky in love for one, and hard to make a success is 2. And when a man have a family and it's hard to survive for, and the one thing left to do is to feel sorry for yourself, this experience of all the blues, I'm living the surviving of it. That is my faith. What's so good about the blues is that when you feel sorry for yourself, you can get to yourself and sing the blues leading to your faith.
On the Dodge in Deer Lodge. There it was in all its crummy glory, the tip-top bar and grill. The stage was big, the club was a glorified barn. The acoustics were atrocious. If you went back the next day, I'd guarantee you could still hear the guitar solo. The sound bounced around like a brand new tennis ball on cement. We walked into the club. Vinny was right on cue.
Just another shiny toilet.
The joint was already packed. 1 hour before showtime, and it was standing room only. The bar held 500 people if you were pushing it, and the club owner was definitely pushing it. For something different, or rather, to vary the monotony of the lineup, I thought we should change the order. AC insisted she go first instead of me. As I said before, she wasn't herself, and I was willing to do whatever would make her happy. Like a young teen waiting for their first date, AC couldn't stand still. Whatever was bothering her, she was done brooding about it alone. I could tell she was ready for a big old musical dump. AC began to sing with every ounce of flesh. Her feet were rooted to the stage's indoor-outdoor carpeting. When her feet did move, it was so she could lift and slam them down one at a time to get even more power coming through her. If a human being could become gravity, she could. At the end of the song, the sweat was pouring off her, and I don't think she felt any better from the 7-minute purging. From the look on her face, I could see she was just letting the cork out of the bottle. The evil genie looked like it would soon appear. The club date differs than a concert date, not only in ambiance, but in presentation. We were always more lax in the clubs, willing to make mistakes, try new things, jam out the tunes 5 minutes more than normal. And we took the time to bullshit with the audience. The concerts were about putting our best face forward, and the operative word was slick. The band was in the mood to jam. It was a musical gas to hear them stretch, and besides, we had 3 hours to fill. Marty pulled out a couple of his new originals. One was a funky type of Chicago blues shuffle. As the room warmed up, making the smoke seem thicker than it was, the tune modulated up a half step each time the band came around to the next verse. The boys were having fun, and it was catchy. Though it wasn't normal, on stage, next to each band member was a drink. The club owner, Scott, wanted everyone to have a good time. This was only the first set. We still had 2 half-hour breaks and 2 one-hour shows to go. I was nervous. When a couple of us decided to throw all caution to the wind, it was a green light for the rest to follow. Since Scott, the club owner, was from a different evolutionary process than the rest of us, he felt the effects of booze more intensely. Scott was no different than most club owners I had worked for, which made him first cousin to a flatworm. The similarities were quite significant. A flatworm's most distinctive characteristics are the following: no spine, and not able to hear, taste, or smell. If you cut a flatworm up in 5 sections, all 5 sections will grow new body parts. Instead of mouths, they have suction cups. If you brought a flatworm to a bar, its mouth would fit perfectly around a long-necked beer bottle. You'd have a deaf, tasteless, no-smelling, spineless, sexless, reproducing, Budweiser-sucking worm, a club owner. Yes, indeed, there is quite a similarity between a flatworm and a club owner. Only the club owner generally doesn't know it. Scott, for example, thought he was our great patron saint of music. This guy had a couple of degrees in slime. He actually said to me once,
So what if you've been in the business for 25 years? I've been in it for 5, which gives me the fresher outlook and a better understanding of the business.
What? I don't remember Scott's last name. What I do remember was his short, balding, pock-marked face from drinking too much wine that had never seen a grape. I was determined, after dealing with him, to finish writing that song I kept threatening to write, Club the Owner. As I stood on stage watching Paula do her thing, I could see Scott approaching with shots of tequila for the band. He had something up his sleeve. Then I remembered. He played guitar. Poorly. Even so, it was mandatory to let him sit in. Because Scott was the head honcho with the paycheck, we had to treat him with respect just the same. The shots continued to appear throughout the night. All of us lost count on how much we drank. On the breaks, Lucy, Chrissy, Vinny, and I were doing shooters of whiskey. It was getting pretty hazy by the end of the last set. The more we drank, the more we loosened up, and so did the music. We were playing everything louder, faster, and sloppier as the liquor took over the music flowing through our formerly creative, booze-soaked veins. The audience seemed drunker than we did, but we'll never know for sure. I felt like I was starring opposite Ray Milland in the film The Lost Weekend, but my loss was more specific. I was being featured in the Lost set. At the beginning of the night, I was raring and ready to go. The rocket had been strapped on firmly and fueled for the outer stratosphere. But the last set was a blackout that my rocket was uncontrollably weaving in and out of, and I was headed for a crash landing. After we finished and the applause had died down, it was time to get paid. I was in no condition to count money, but I was still keeping my little secrets from the band. I found Scott in the back office. He must have drunk too much of his holy water because the patron saint was drunk and surly. Hey, Scott, we need to get paid. Can we take care of that right now?
Yeah, as soon as I add up all your deductions.
I was confused. I didn't know of any deductions. What fucking deductions? He handed me a list.
It's all there. Your 6 motel rooms, the meals here at the club, the Xeroxing for promotional flyers, the newspaper, and radio advertising.
I was drunk, but not blind. I immediately saw that the deductions added up to half our pay. Scott was looking sheepish. I snapped and began to scream. Hey, just a minute. What are you trying to pull here? These expenses were agreed on when we signed the contract. Look at me. You know what I'm saying is true, you little fuck. You're just fucking drunk, and you're trying to get over on us. You have no spine, and you can't pick on anybody with any real power, so you think, why not fuck over some helpless musicians? There's always more where they come from. I actually feel sorry for you, Scott. You're the kind of piece of shit slime that has never had any real power in life. No one has ever listened to you. You've never been in any position to make any real decisions, and if you ever were, I'm fucking positive you abused it and the privilege of making a decision was taken away from you. How does it feel to be a shell of a man no one would hire or who no one could possibly like, and on top of being a worm, you have no fucking talent, so you try and take advantage of people who do. That's it. You're fucking jealous of people like us. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking from the adrenaline the anger was pumping through my veins. We have the guts to live and to commit to a kind of life that you would never have the guts to live, even if you did have any fucking talent. How miserable it must be to be you. How fucking awful it would be to be so slimy. Jesus, the only person you have left in your life is your brother, and he's barely hanging on. You know what he says behind your back? He says, You're a piece of shit drunk, and it's just a matter of time until you fuck up so bad that he will get to run this toilet by himself. Finally, you won't be around to drink all the fucking profits. We'll all get even with you, motherfucker. You have just fucked over your last fucking victim, you cheap, slimy, no-talent piece of shit motherfucker. And as a matter of fact, you piece of shit, you can go out and tell the band that I don't have their money because you're a piece of shit, cheap motherfucker. You can go tell them that they drove across 3 states to get fucked over by a slime ball like you. I had to take a breath. I was flipping out. Meanwhile, Scott just looked at me with a stupid smirk on his face. I was wasting the breath I had stopped to take. The guy was probably in a blackout too and would forget everything that had just happened. It was time to call in the big guns. I yelled for Lenny with the intention of sicking him on Mr. Slime. I filled him in on the situation, though I didn't need to because anyone that was left in the bar, which was the entire women's show, had heard me. I figured Lenny would say shit so many times that Scott would run out of his office screaming, "Get the fuck out!" while throwing the money at Lenny. Lenny made himself look extra mean. While walking towards Scott's dingy office, Lenny puffed himself up and walked like he had just won the World Wrestling Championship. I left Lenny alone with Scott for about 30 minutes. I figured he was probably negotiating more rationally than I could. Lenny emerged looking just like I did after my first divorce, pissed off and empty-handed. We sat at a large round table waiting to hear the bad news. All of us, except for AC, had been through this kind of shit before. AC had some sort of money angel on her shoulder. Club owners never screwed her over. Of course, this fact didn't help her opinion of me. She was sure the reason that any problem we had was because I wasn't doing my job properly. Lenny looked angry and depressed.
Hey.
I knew it was bad news, but I asked anyway. What happened?
Shit. That shithead ain't gonna give up shit. He's too drunk to know what the fuck I'm talking about.
I felt responsible somehow. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't know what else to do. Sam once again came to the rescue in true Pee-wee style.
I think we should take Mr. Chair and throw him out Mr. Window.
We all laughed, except for AC. She was wound pretty tight. Let's just get the hell out of here. I not only felt responsible, but helpless. I couldn't let that asshole have the last word. It was then I came up with Plan B. Vinny would be my cohort in revenge. I knew Paula, Nina, Marty, Sam, and AC would not be in favor of my plan since it would make them accomplice to the crime. As we were loading out, I realized we had been using the house's sound system, Scott's personal system. At the end of the night, it was returned to and stored in the back room, next to the back door, next to where we were loading out, next to being gone. At this point, Vinny and I were drunker than pigs. Loading Scott's gear into my van made perfect sense. Vinny let Lenny in on the plan, so Lenny backed off Scott, pretending to make peace with him and the situation. Almost everything fit into the van. As we were trying to squeeze in the last 2 speakers, Scott staggered up to the back of my van and slurred.
Hey, you guys, no hard feelings. How about it? You need a hand with the last of these 2 pieces?
That's when Fellini came in to direct. Vinny is drunk, with upper lip quivering, getting close to the sneering state.
Yeah, man, we'll take all the help we can get.
Scott, blind drunk, started to help us rearrange his gear so we could squeeze my speakers in. He was in such a pushing, pulling, lifting, setting down, moving, sweating, making it harder than it was determined smoking the peace pipe drunken state of mind that he didn't recognize his own stuff. It was too weird. Vinny rode with me. Chrissy and Lucy were waiting in the van. Vinny had big plans.
First fucking music store, we'll fence this fucking shit. We'll get our money. We gotta show these motherfuckers not to fuck with us.
Chrissy picked it up from there. Can't fuck with us. He can do it to whoever else he wants, but not us. Then the tip-top joke started.
I'll show him a tip. I'll get on top and show him what a real tip feels like.
Pointing at her crotch.
You can tip this.
Up my butt with his tip top.
I'm fucking my way up to the top. Any tips? We joked our way through the getaway. Well, at least Lucy and Chrissy weren't mad about the stolen goods. It felt good to know that I had 4 allies, including Lenny and Vinny. Even though drunk, we managed to realize that spending the night in Missoula with stolen goods was not smart. In our impaired state, thinking and driving were questionable. Looking at the map through drunken eyes, it seemed the closest town large enough to have a motel would be Deer Lodge, Montana. As we were driving across the lily-white cowboy state of Montana, I was beginning to have a reality check. I mean, there I was, with a black man who was sneering, a small angry white girl still saying fuck on cue, and a 6-foot black woman who could be mistaken for a Hawaiian hooker. And we were all hightailing it to a place called Deer Lodge, Montana, with stolen goods in my van. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Deer Lodge was exactly 81.5 miles from Missoula and just 41 miles from Butte. The valley it sits in is 45 miles long, 10 miles wide, and surrounded on all sides by mountain peaks of 10,000 feet. The Clark Fort River runs through the middle of it. That's what Happy Hilltone told me. It was dark. I had to take his word for it.
That's Hilltone, with an E. Unfortunately, no relation to the hotel chain.
Happy ran the all-night gas station. We stood eyeball to eyeball, 5'6", with his hairy arms crossed. He looked like an ex-pro boxer, flat nose, cauliflower ears, stubby body. Happy had a friendly fat face with big pores and clear blue eyes. His black hair was slicked back with the smell of Brill cream on it. The gray was coming in. Happy looked tough, like he spent a lot of time in the back country. There was nothing soft about his demeanor. Happy began to roll a cigarette.
You people spending the night in town? Think you can keep yourselves under control? We don't want no trouble here, you know. Decent people live in this town. God-fearing people.
He was checking out our sorry-looking asses, checking us out and having fun. You could see the mischief. He was going to see if I could take it, which was barely. I was wrung out. My support crew had passed out. Vinny's sneer had relaxed enough so that his chin had drool running down on one corner. I took this all in, along with Happy. I didn't want to talk anymore. English was becoming my second language. I was feeling tired and cranky. I needed to work on my bad attitude. I didn't feel particularly friendly right about then. I was fed up. I wanted to sleep, escaping the drama that followed me around all of the time, and besides, the road sucked. What the fuck was Deer Lodge anyway? Why was I standing in a gas station with Happy Hilltone with an E, trying to be nice? I answered with my tired but charming voice. Oh, no need to worry. We're passing through. Trouble is not something I'm friendly with either. I glanced at the stolen gear while saying this. I offered more information. We're entertainers. We're on our way to Fargo, North Dakota. We're the opening act for Roy Orbison. Just finished doing a show with B.B. King. That would impress him. He might even give me free gas and ask for my autograph. Happy wasn't impressed.
I don't listen to that loud rock and roll stuff. Glenn Miller is my speed. Now that was music.
When Happy mentioned the king of swing, I remembered the line my friend Johnny Tempo used when playing Elks Clubs. Elks Clubs were official Glenn Miller territories. He'd say,
Wouldn't it be great if Glenn Miller had lived and his music had died?
I decided not to try out this line on Happy. I wasn't that drunk. While Happy filled the tank, I sat on the bench he had set out for the customer's comfort. I started reflecting on my life. Here I was in my 40s, sitting in redneck heaven, worrying that some two-bit drunken club owner would track me down and have me jailed. This was not the way I had dreamed my life would turn out. Once again, I thought to myself, this has got to stop. The drinking thing, the insanity. I was so fucking tired. I didn't even know where the rest of the band was staying for the night. I wasn't acting like any professional I had ever met. On top of it all, most of the people in the band that I was trying to keep happy really didn't give a flying fuck about me. They just needed to work. If I couldn't provide gigs for them, they would be gone in a hot minute looking for someone reliable who could make sure they got their rent money every month. I was losing my grip. I could feel the whole thing slipping away like a big 10-pound salmon out on the Campbell River. I fought and fought with that damn fish until I thought he was going to pull my arms out of their sockets. After 10 minutes of fighting, he started to give up. I began to reel him in. With one last desperate attempt at freedom, he flung himself away from the boat. I was so exhausted, I had to let go. I gave up. At the time, it didn't seem worth the fight. This very moment, none of the crap going on was worth the fight. The politics and shenanigans had nothing to do with the fishing I had hoped to do. I was forgetting what my original dream was. The dream was getting lost in the murky bottom of my soul. I had come to catch a steelhead, and instead I ended up with carp. All of the bottom feeding that I was putting myself through had left me with a panic of a hooked fish in the pit of my gut. This isn't how normal people live. After the road trip, I needed to find a different way. Oh, hell. Why am I driving myself crazy with these thoughts? Jesus, this isn't the time to think about the big one that got away. I've got other fish to fry. Just then, my eyes fell on some travel brochures sitting next to the pop machine. My attention went directly to Welcome to Deer Lodge, home of Montana State Prison. Great. I knew it was a sign we weren't going to escape. At least I could just walk to jail. I wouldn't have to trouble the officer. No, sir, officer, you go ahead and finish your donut and coffee. I'll just walk to prison. Don't worry about me. I'll find it. It's right across the street. This was weird. Definitely some kind of sign. I wasn't sure I wanted to know exactly what kind of sign. I had to go to bed because I was getting paranoid, and sleep helped everything. Happy pointed me in the direction of the motels.
If you need anything, just call the station. I live right behind it by myself, so you won't be waking anybody up but me.
Behind the gas station in most places would be dreary, but in Deer Lodge, it's beautiful country. Living in a shack in Deer Lodge is better than a condo in the swankiest part of a major city. We said goodbye. My watch read 5 a.m, time to hit the motel. We had more choices for accommodations than expected. 4 of them: Motel 8, Scharf's Motor Inn, Clark Fort Inn, and Western Big Sky Inn. The last one looked good to me because the name sounded wholesome, and for Egg McMuffin convenience, next door there was a McDonald's. I didn't want to go too overboard with the wholesome thing. We pulled in and got a room with fewer hassles than I thought. It was just about then that Vinny came too.
Where the fuck are we? Why are we stopping?
I answered in my most deliberate don't fuck with me delivery. We are in fucking Deer Lodge, Montana, at the Western Big Sky Motel. We are stopping because I'm tired. Why, Vinny? Vinny knew this was not a safe place for him right now. But he wasn't going to go down quietly. Mr. Funky bass player was always up for a fight, ignoring that I really needed to be left alone. During the Watts riots in California, black store owners had chalked Soul Brother on their windows, so they would be spared the violence that was intended for whites only. Vinny had always been a soul brother to me, but at that very moment, he was no relation, and I thought how badly he needed a soul brother sign painted across his forehead. Vinny's determination to chase the rat down the hole and my short fuse were not a good combination. Vinny just couldn't resist.
What's your fucking problem?
I was too tired not to walk into the argument trap. Where should I start, Vinny? How about getting arrested for stolen goods? The fuse was lit and burning quickly. You're the one that wanted to steal the fucking speakers. I guess that was a decision I made all by myself, right, Vinny? After all, I am the one who will get arrested. It's my van, and of course I stole the gear without your help. You didn't help me lift Scott's speakers. That was some other guy that looked just like you in Missoula, Montana. I keep forgetting that you and Lenny are fucking angels. Vinny wasn't taking my assessment well.
Fuck you. It was your idea and now you are trying to shift blame. I'm not talking to you anymore. You fucking drunk.
My insides were unraveling. The worn-out baseball had been thrown too many times. If I didn't scream as loudly as I could, I probably would have thrown up. What makes you think we are talking, you stupid fuck? This is a fucking argument. You and all the others do this shit to me all the time. Every time there is some kind of hassle, I'm the one that takes the fucking heat. When it's your idea to fire someone, I do the dirty work. You're like a fucking buzzard. You wait until others do the killing for you, and then you pick the remains, you lazy motherfucker. Lay the fuck off. Vinny got it. Now, there was no doubt in Vinny's mind that this was not a safe place for him. I was to be left alone. He mumbled some sort of apology and suggested that we share a room. Lucy and Chrissy were pretending to be asleep. I'm sure the next morning they would let me know how both of them were there for me. Being in the country with Vinny was an affront to my aesthetic nature. He was a Chicago boy. He wasn't impressed with trees, mountains, waterfalls, or wildlife. Vinny didn't feel secure unless there was a Pizzeria Uno nearby. While falling asleep, I could hear him grumbling something about Deer Lodge.
What the fuck is that supposed to mean? I bet white, Aryan, black-hating, deer-hunting motherfuckers stay here. Fuck this place.
The next morning, I knew I had to call Scott. I couldn't keep the gear no matter how much I rationalized the theft. It was taking up too much room in my head, which at this point was pretty crowded with a committee of booze-soaked brain cells doing the slam dance. The morning after the heist, I lifted my head, which I was sure weighed more than the gear we had stolen, picked up the phone, dialed Scott's number, and woke him. Hey, Scott, this is Lena. Somebody accidentally loaded your gear into my van. We were pretty high, man. Sorry about that. Would you mind coming to Deer Lodge and pick it up? We're on a tight schedule. You don't mind, do you? He didn't even know the gear was missing. He probably was still feeling sleazy about stealing our money if a club owner could have feelings.
Yeah, I'll be there in a couple of hours.
Meet us at the Pizza Hut. Now for the hard part. Getting out of bed. I did it again. The only person I knew who had worse hangovers than I did was Vinny. When I made the phone call to Scott, Vinny was still out cold. I had to shower and get out of the room before he woke up. My hangovers were enough for me to deal with. I didn't want any part of Vinny's. Anyway, I had stolen gear business to take care of. I needed to kill some time before Scott showed up. I found myself strolling through the gift shop to the left of the lobby of the motel. It was filled with horsehair products, hat bands, boots, purses, wallets, vests, date book covers, bookends, and more. I found out that Deer Lodge was the horsehair capital of America. You mean there's one somewhere else in the world? Next, I ventured into the motel lobby. It was time for mass coffee. Chrissy was there for the free continental breakfast. She had her big purse. Fresh fruit and muffins would soon be the closest of friends at the bottom of her bag. We both looked pretty ragged. Chrissy was feeling better with each item she stuck into her pocketbook. As she stuffed, she filled me in on the early morning gossip. I knew AC was brewing some strong and dark resentments. I didn't know if I was up for a third confrontation in less than 24 hours. When I was exposed to envy, competitiveness, or aggression, it would remind me of my mother, who was unable to unleash her own powerful spirit, making her envious, critical, and aggressive at times. So even if someone was within his or her right when confronting me, it didn't matter. Their aggression would trigger deep-rooted terror. So needless to say, I avoided confrontation at all costs. But it didn't matter anymore because it was coming to find me. AC lumbered in for coffee and something with sugar on it. She was a diabetic who ate a lot of sugar. She looked unhealthy with dark circles under her eyes. I was worried about her. Her health was bad, though, again, she wouldn't admit it. She felt great. Don't worry about her. Everything was fine. With her mouth full of muffin, she said, "Rough night, huh? Looks like you had a rough night." When I nodded, I thought I heard a couple of slam-dancing brain cells leap into the vicious crowd. In true navigator form, she informed me, "We have a long drive ahead of us, a very long drive ahead of us, approximately 868.5 miles. Her exactness was really irritating me. "That doesn't sound approximate, AC. It sounds exact. Why do you care so much about being that fucking right?" I heard a huge slam. At first I thought it was the dance party in my head, but I was wrong. It was what I had just said hitting AC square in the head and ricocheting around the room. I had hurt her feelings. She was just trying to be friendly and helpful. Hey, I got a job to do. I got a job to do. If you don't like how I do it, then get somebody else. Just get somebody else. I'm being professional. She was right. She was a pro. AC was always there when you needed her. She was just so damn righteous about it all. I apologized. The Western Big Sky Inn was a disguised Super 8. The Western motif was supposed to set it apart. Each room had pictures of cowboys with their cowboy hats on, doing cowboy things, roping, sitting around a campfire, and riding horses. The motel managers were friendly and glad to have us. In the lobby, they had a brochure rack, the same as Happy's. I looked through them and daydreamed about how nice it would be to take a romantic trip with Beau. There would be no real hurry to get anywhere. How wonderful it would be to not have a time frame. I wanted to take that trip sometime soon. I wondered if anyone would notice me throwing myself through the big picture window in the lobby. AC was seething. I could see she was trying like hell to keep her temper under control. She stood in front of me with her arms crossed and started in a controlled, "I'm going to blow up any minute, so just be careful of what you say to me" voice. I don't like what went on last night, Lena. It was really stupid of you to jeopardize the rest of us for something that 4 drunks thought was a good idea. I wanted to pick up something sharp and heavy and hurl it at her. Maybe a horsehair-covered napkin holder. Why? Because she was right and because she called me a drunk. Who the fuck did she think she was talking to? AC, it's not one of my best maneuvers, but I gotta tell you, I'm getting pretty fucking tired of being screwed over by these club owners. There. She couldn't argue with that. I mean, after all, I was protecting AC's money. We were in this together. She couldn't be that mad at me. I tried to avoid her eyes. At that moment, there was no doubt in my mind that looks could kill, or at least wound deeply. I'm not going to get into it with you right now, Lena. But there are more professional ways of taking care of business than the limited and unprofessional schemes you've imagined. I fought back the tears of embarrassment and fury. I felt like an unskilled laborer. I had this job to do and none of the right tools. Every feeling I ever had was banging around in my empty toolbox. I didn't know if I should scream and pull AC's hair out or if I should put my arms around her and beg for help. I did neither. I didn't have much control left, but I conjured up every bit of what was there and answered her through clenched teeth. "Listen, AC, I'm sorry. I probably could have handled this situation more professionally. I just had a little bit too much to drink. That's all. It won't happen again." AC was not going to be charmed. She was fed up. "I don't care how you handle anything from now on." Like my old boyfriends, AC was done with me. She had turned and walked away with both hands clenched at her sides. I knew this wasn't the last of it. AC had more to say. It was just a matter of when. Chrissy and Lucy were standing behind the brochure rack, pretending to read the all-of-a-sudden really interesting museum material. It would be a matter of delayed time, and they would once again come running to my defense. Mr. Slime Club owner, Scott, pulled up on time, looking hungover. He motioned me over away from the rest of the group. As I got closer, the afternoon sun allowed me to see what the alcohol had been doing to him. There were dark circles framing his bloodshot eyes. The pores on his unshaven face were big enough to walk around in. I could smell the booze like steam on a hot summer day rising out of those tiny manholes all over his body. I saw the psychic pain he was in. This was a sick human being that needed help and didn't know it. Hey, Scott. Sorry about the mix-up.
Yeah, well, maybe we did have a little too much to drink last night.
Then Scott did the unexpected.
Anyway, here's $500. But that's all you get. I've got expenses, you know.
We handed over the speakers. I'm sure he knew it wasn't an accident. We had made our point. Even so, I was sick of the bullshit. I couldn't wait to get out of Montana, momentarily forgetting it was North Dakota we were headed for. The Montana beat drummed on. We were getting farther into John Wayne country. Cowboy hats, horses, and I'm sure plenty of six-shooters just out of sight. The names of towns were representative of where we were: Grangeville, Deer Lodge. And now we were headed for Big Timber. The general consensus was that we would have lunch there. The idea of eating in Big Timber not only sounded hearty, but beautiful, because this was a spectacular part of the world. I thought of Bo as the cassette unwound the blues straight in my heart. Gonna pack my suitcase and move to the piney woods. Got a woman down there, boys. Don't mean poor Bo no good. Montana's tag is Big Sky Country. I had heard it called that for years and would think, yeah, right, how can the sky be bigger there than anywhere else? It is. The sky is huge. There are no obstructions. The landscape is positively vast. And once again, there I was in the presence of God's work, making my personal and musical problems the proper size. They seemed to no longer consume every waking moment of my life. All the natural beauty looming up before me was making me aware of my lack of balance, which was a word that hadn't yet taken a place in my vocabulary. I still had more drama to experience. It was time to switch passengers. The excuse was for a change in the monotony. But really, it was so we wouldn't kill each other. I now had Nina and Paula. At least Paula was sane, and I did require sanity right about then. Nina was being surface-friendly, but I could feel the chill in the enclosed, heat-filled van. Maybe it was a good thing, Nina and I riding together. The balloon needed to be popped, and the constant traveling together might be the sharp pin to do it. I didn't know how long Chrissy and Lucy would last with AC. Nina had decided that I was the better of two evils, so she was happy right where she was. I was beginning not to give a flying fuck anymore. We usually didn't ride with the guys. Though we women would fight with each other, on the other side of it were some of the best times of our lives. We all knew that. The gossip was always wicked, good, and juicy. Also, our life experiences were similar, which allowed the camaraderie to be evident most of the time. The guys had their own thing going on. Nina started to sing a song we all loved. One of the great singers of all time, Ann Peebles, recorded the tune. Chrissy had worked with her in the late 60s and early 70s. Nina's haunting voice and the road were winding together. My man, my man, my man, my man. Her sound was deep and green, harmonizing with the scenery. The notes were hanging in the air, heavy with Nina's pain. The pain was so deep, I was afraid that the sound of it would unleash the conjured spirits, wild and soulful entities that had been kept silent for too long. The song was what I heard. The song was filling my head. There was no room for nothing else except the earthy sounds of Nina's pain-filled tones. The voices came together and then gradually fell away. The highway would change, tenuous on the curves, then faster before and after. I could do this because I knew I was lucky. Being with those women was a gift. I would go to the harmony part I claimed as my own, the harmony that made sense to my ear. My part was necessary, just like the others. It's a mantra. My man, my man, my man, my man. My man, my man, my man, my man. Like the unspoken mantra, we all felt the same thing. The road moved with the harmony. The rhythm, there it was again. It was lost for a while. The stupid shit got in the way. I got in the way. Go with the flow, Lena. There it is. Now I got it. The company was good. The van was running well. I didn't have a hangover. Yeah, this was good. Big Timber was a couple of 100 miles away. The roads were winding and slow, like my thoughts. The miles that needed to be covered would take longer than straight-ahead driving. That was fine with me. Like a difficult song, an arduous journey is an appreciated one. The song had brought Nina's old pain forward. Nina needed to talk about a musician she lived with for 3 years.
Y'all remember Jake, don't you? He picked a little guitar for me.
We knew him as a raging addict and alcoholic. Looking out the window in her slow, determined way, she continued to talk.
I loved that man for longer than I care to remember. He beat me all the time till I couldn't take the beatings no more. I had to finally get help. I had become like a scared little rabbit. I was left with no pride. I'd go to the gigs with black eyes and bruises on my arms, trying to cover them up. Oh, Jesus, how I was scared all the time. I was afraid to tell you. I was afraid to tell anybody.
We were listening. We all knew her then, and none of us were aware of what she was going through. Nina started to cry. Through her sobbing, she was trying to tell us about the pain in an even, slower drawl, the same decelerated way she sang the blues.
I just knew I was going to die from that hurt. I felt like there was a big old hole in my soul. I couldn't go down home, so I had nowhere to go. Maybe I'm just no good. My daddy beat me. My husband's beat me. There must be something wrong with me.
It was the second time she had opened up with me. With both of us, never. Her pain was being openly displayed for us to see. The remembered memories were welling up in her eyes, and her voice shook just slightly with the ache. We took turns. Paula went first.
Oh, our poor little nasty Nina. You're not alone, girlfriend. We love you. Next time you need to talk, don't you forget about us when the pain comes. You better start getting busy and call us. It's not like some of us haven't been there. You remember Robert, don't you? I tell you what, girlfriend, that man would come home drunker than a pig at 3 a.m. and start demanding breakfast. The fucker would wake me up out of a dead sleep with his screaming. I did what he wanted, because if I didn't, I was in deep shit. A slap across the face was his standard way of communicating. Robert loved corned beef hash, girlfriend. Always wanted me to make it from scratch. Finally, one night, I got the idea to give him dog food. I remember standing in the pantry trying to decide if I should give him the red labeled or blue labeled Purina. I decided on the blue label because the red had too many carrots in it. The whole time I was frying that shit up, I was getting my revenge. I served it all nice and pretty on the good china. That stupid motherfucker thought it was the best corned beef hash he'd ever eaten. I started praying for him to wake me up in the middle of the night so I could get more of that dog food in him. I stayed with him about 2 months after I started feeding him Rover's chow. I bet to this day that fucker is running around peeing on fire hydrants and sniffing some broad's ass.
We laughed a little, but Nina was in too much pain to laugh at anything. The top of the volcano had blown and there was no stopping the lava that had come pouring out. Paula hugged her, held her close, rocking her like a little baby. She had the best hug. As Paula comforted Nina, she quietly cooed.
Poor Nina, poor Nina, poor Nina, poor Nina.
I didn't say much. I was just out of a relationship with a sociopath myself. I had a motto. I loved scary movies, scary rides, and scary men. And this man has scared me. I love you, Nina. I'm sorry you had to go through it. Everyone gets his or her turn in the barrel. I gotta admit, though, your turn has been up for a long time. I couldn't think of anything else. What I said didn't seem like enough. Paula had just thought of something else. Laughing, she passed on some of her father's advice.
Girlfriend, my daddy told me a long time ago, if you don't like the bus you just got on, don't worry about it, 'cause honey, there'll be another one in 15 minutes.
We laughed and it broke the somber mood. Once again, we were on the road and remembering, crying, thinking, talking, and laughing about the men that had done us wrong and about Nina's pain. My concentration was back on the road up ahead. I loved driving on roads that challenged my driving skills. What was the perfect speed so I didn't have to speed up or slow down around the deadly curves? How could I make the drive as smooth as glass? In a sports car, it would be easy, but in a van, close to impossible. The gentle rocking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The women had fallen asleep. When teasing, the group called me Mom. People would ask, "Do you have kids?" My answer was, "No, I have a band." I was the mom, and the van a metal cradle. I had rocked my children to sleep. I could see the others ahead. Lenny was always first because he was the trail master. AC followed him with the maps, and I brought up the rear. Our group of pilgrims banded together for safety, naturally fell into our unspoken positions. We drivers would blink our lights as a signal to stop if we needed to. Over the years, we had learned to caravan because the minute you didn't, something seemed to go wrong, like a flat tire, a loose hose, or running out of gas. As the tour progressed, it was getting more dangerous for me to be alone in my head. In The Exorcist, the younger priest was told by the more experienced man of the cloth not to have a conversation with the devil because the devil knows you better than you know yourself. And oh Lord, I can testify to that statement being oh so true. I knew my boozing days were numbered. My philosophy of too much, too fast, because I have so little time wasn't quite getting it anymore. I had gotten sloppy in so many ways. My looks were starting to slip. My face was bloated. I had gained weight, and my nose hurt from the cocaine. Daily showers were becoming optional. Like a politician, I used words to not say anything while the devil was stealing my spirit and I was losing my soul. I wasn't connected to anyone or anybody and couldn't quite get it in the center of the action, causing me to run around chasing the feeling I just missed. Oh, help me, Mr. Preacher Man, because I'm in the middle of nothing. Tell me, Mr. Preacher Man, what to do while I'm waiting here to feel something. Could you please hurry, Mr. Preacher Man, because the devil is sneaking up behind me. Once again, this was a personal hell. No one knew how bad I felt, which was no surprise because I barely let myself know. 7 more days and I would be home. I could do something about it all then. Maybe I could even be with Bo. Nature had allowed me to see how distorted I had become. Next to the perfect scenery, my imperfections were glaring. This must be how the devil feels when looking into the face of God. It was Friday afternoon, and it felt like the Tip Top Club happened weeks ago, but it had happened only the night before. I promised myself from here on in, I would be on good behavior. In the meantime, I popped in another tape, the best of Irma Thomas. That was more like it.